Tonight, Lino Saputo's lapse of memory.
Que jamais, soit de près ou de loin, la mafia était associée avec Saputo.
The richest man in Quebec has always denied any connection to the mafia, a claim he repeats in his autobiography published last fall.
We respected the law, kept our distance from criminal organizations.
He had to have known who Bonnano was. He knew that Bonnano had a secret relationship with his company.
Joe Bonnano was the mafia godfather in the U.S.
His address is 255.
And this Arizona officer who investigated him will help us fill in some of the gaps in Lino Saputo's story.
We're picking up the notes that he had a hidden financial interest in Saputo cheese.
And through newly uncovered documents, we will tell you about other relationships Lino Saputo had with criminals. We'll also reveal shadowy areas in the lives of other members of his family who attended a big event at the home of the Rizzutos, who were the Canadian mafia bosses at the time. I'm Marie-Maude Denis. Welcome to Enquête. It's an intriguing book. In his memoir, one of Canada's wealthiest businessmen tells the story of his rise from rags to riches. And he devotes an entire chapter to allegations of his links to the mafia.
Les descentes policières et la mauvaise presse n'avaient pas fini de salir notre réputation.
For over 2 years, our colleague Gaëtan Pouliot has been collecting documents about Lino Saputo and members of his family.
Voir notre réputation ternie a été la pire des difficultés que nous ayons connues.
The Saputo family achieved business stardom in a spectacular way. Saputo Inc. is now the biggest dairy and cheese company in Canada and comes in second in the United States.
La compagnie québécoise Saputo a de l'appétit. Saputo achète la compagnie américaine Stella Foods.
It has grown into an international empire with over 17,000 employees.
On se rappelle surtout qu'elle a sauvé Culinard et ses Joe Louis de l'assimilation à l'américaine Interstate Bakery.
Today, the Saputo family is worth an estimated $6 billion with its flagship company, Saputo Inc. But that's only a fraction of their fortune. These iconic buildings in downtown Montreal are part of their real estate holdings. The Saputos also own Montreal's soccer team and have interest in the trucking and lumber industries.
Lino Saputo a littéralement sauvé les forêts de la faillite.
Lino Saputo is retired from the cheesemaking business. He now devotes his time to philanthropy. But documents that we found shine a light on what is not being said in Lino Saputo's autobiography. From Albany, New York to Arizona, we uncovered secrets the billionaire might have hoped would be buried forever. At 82 years of age, Lino Saputo decided it was time to tell his story.
As I look back on my life, I realize how important my youth was in shaping my priorities and life choices later on.
He was born in the Sicilian village of Montelepre. Lino is the fourth of 8 children born to Maria and Giuseppe Saputo.
My father was a local businessman and a cheesemaker by trade. He took pride in the quality and taste of the cheeses he made.
But life was changing in his village. After World War II, Sicily was left in ruins.
Our village, and Sicily as a whole, soon resembled the Wild West. Violence was commonplace. Our system of government and governance model crumbled, creating a power vacuum that the local mafia were all too happy to fill.
The Saputos decided to flee, and like thousands of other Italians at the time, set out to make a better life for themselves in Canada.
On December 8, 1952, we arrived in Halifax, where we boarded the train for Montreal.
In Montreal, at the start of the 50s, the Saputo family began earning a modest living through odd jobs. To help his father return to the cheese-making business, Lino Saputo donated all of his savings to set up the company. It's a story he often tells, like at this press conference in 2003.
$500 pour acheter l'équipement nécessaire pour commencer à faire un peu de fromage à la main, puis la bicycle pour faire les premières livraisons.
In September 1954, Giuseppe Saputo e Figli was born.
Business was good, and they were soon able to trade in the bicycle for a delivery van.
By 1957, our business, though still modest in size, had grown. We purchased a property on 8th Avenue in the Saint-Michel neighborhood. We lived upstairs and worked downstairs.
But in the early 60s, trouble came their way. The gangsters the family left behind in Italy were already well established as the mafia in Montreal, and it was run with an iron grip by Vic Cotroni.
The man in the Cadillac is Vincenzo Cotroni. He answers to no one in Canada.
The rise of the pizzeria had led to fierce competition, particularly from unsavory types, some from within the local Italian community. In their desire to seize control of the local market, they didn't think twice about resorting to violence.
It led to what some called the cheese war or the pizza war. Reports of violence and vandalism in the cheese industry were piling up at the Special Investigation Unit on Organized Crime. The year of 1963 kept Montreal police investigators especially busy.
The truck's tires were slashed, arson committed at the back of the facility, sulfuric acid mixed with fermenting milk, explosion inside the front entrance.
Lino Saputo will also fall victim to these mobsters in May of '63. While delivering cheese near Montreal's Little Italy, he was brutally beaten.
As soon as I walked into the kitchen, I was told to go to the basement. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, 3 men attacked me. One of them pummeled me with what looked like a baseball bat. They said they wanted me and my company out of the cheese business. I was petrified. A few minutes later, they fled, leaving me there, bleeding on the floor.
According to his version, Lino Saputo can't say with certainty who his assailants were.
I didn't want to speculate about the identity of my attackers, or worse, make false accusations.
But according to police records, witnesses in the restaurant recognized the thugs. One of them was Paolo Violi, who would eventually be charged with assaulting Lino Saputo.
Violi emmenait large à Montréal.
Jean-Pierre Charbonneau is an expert on the mafia. He collaborated with a major provincial inquiry into organized crime during the 70s.
La SECO avait identifié le groupe comme étant le groupe Cotroni-Violi. C'est-à-dire les deux ensemble faisaient la paire et pendant plusieurs années ont eu le haut du pavé sur la paire québécoise et montréalaise.
Paolo Violi was eventually cleared of the charges for assaulting Lino Saputo. The witnesses had backed out. Strangely, even though Violi had been identified as his attacker, that did not stop Lino Saputo from socializing with him. He was at Violi's brother's funeral in 1970 and at the christening of one of Violi's children around the same time. Lino Saputo declined to be interviewed for this story, but his attorney responded in writing to our questions about his links to Paolo Violi and Vic Cotroni. Such links are inevitable when you're a part of a small community like the Italian community. It's a surprising answer, given that Lino Saputo was also conducting business with both Violi and Cotroni.
Donc, Vic Cotroni, c'était le dirigeant de la plus grosse organisation criminelle du Québec et du Canada à l'époque. Une organisation criminelle qui est tentaculaire, qui, dans le fond, trempait dans toutes les raquettes.
We obtained hundreds of police reports on the Violi-Cotroni crime syndicate. Several reports describe meetings between the two mob leaders and Lino Saputo, who was giving them advice on their pepperoni company.
Because he was offering money for
Saputo was also distributing their products. In the late 70s, he was asked by our colleagues at the CBC about his links to Vic Cotroni.
You know Mr. Cotroni, right? But
yes, I know Mr. Cotroni. I know him as a businessman. I know the Prime Minister. I know many, many people. I know a lot of judges. I know lawyers. I'm a businessman.
Lino Saputo had a curious relationship with mob leaders in Montreal at the time, including with the man who had been identified as his attacker, especially considering that in his book, Lino Saputo takes great pains to condemn organized crime.
My father and my maternal grandfather raised me to never do harm to others or get involved with people who resorted to violence. We respected the law, kept our distance from criminal organizations, and avoided crossing the wrong people.
Never get involved with people who resort to violence. Keep a distance from criminal organizations. Lino Saputo forgot to mention his relationship with Violi and Cotroni, but this was not the only lapse of memory.
My father passed on June 8, 1981. His absence weighed heavily on me.
After his father's death, Lino Saputo took over the family business, and he had ambitious plans.
I saw us becoming first-rate dairy processors. Saputo Cheese could become a multinational.
Lino Saputo became an increasingly successful and respected businessman. His company grew and expanded beyond Quebec's borders. It seemed like he was light years away from the cheese wars and the mobsters he associated with in the 60s and 70s. But this next video tells a different story. At a wedding reception, guests dance to the beat of Michael Jackson's hit song. It is 1983. The groom's name is Donald Côté. His bride is Barbara Vuillaume. But let's rewind the tape. The video, obtained through a confidential source, starts with the happy couple seemingly living a peaceful existence in the countryside. But what did Donald Côté do for a living? In order to find out, we pored over newspaper articles from the 60s, 70s, and 80s at the National Library in Montreal. We discovered that Donald Côté had often made the headlines. Officially, he was a jeweler.
C'était pas juste un bijoutier. Si ça avait été un bijoutier, on n'aurait pas trop parlé de lui. Mais je veux dire, ce bijoutier-là, il trempait dans toutes sortes de rackets.
Ici, dans les affaires judiciaires de la presse.
Accusé de voie de fait avec l'intention de mutiler ou de défigurer M. Cousineau.
The man was a violent criminal. In the early 60s, he was found guilty of savagely assaulting a mayor's political opponent in a suburb of Montreal.
Donald Côté était pas un petit... C'était pas du menu frottin. C'était un caïd. C'est-à-dire c'est quelqu'un qui avait atteint, qui avait gravi les échelons. Et les gens qui le fréquentaient, c'était les plus hauts personnages de ce qu'on appelle le crime organisé.
He was also charged with and found guilty of illegally importing diamonds to Canada with an accomplice.
La jeune femme aurait eu 20 000 $ de diamants dissimulés sur sa personne.
He was also accused in 2 separate murder cases, but was found not guilty.
Les 2 hommes avaient été criblés de balles avant d'être déposés dans le coffre d'une automobile qu'on l'on avait ensuite incendiée. OK, là, il est en une.
Le 29 janvier 80.
3 years before his wedding, Donald Côté's name appeared on the front page of the paper in a story about cocaine trafficking. He was cleared of those charges. At the time of his wedding, he was awaiting trial for fraud involving nearly $1 million.
Et puis là, l'idée m'est venue qu'il était peut-être temps que je donne l'importance à une personne que j'aime bien, qui est Barbara.
Barbara Vuillaume, the woman Donald Côté would make his wife, also had a criminal past. Before she changed her name, she was called Marie-Louise Nolan. She was Côté's accomplice in the diamond smuggling case. The couple was also suspected of drug trafficking.
Monsieur Donald Côté, voulez-vous prendre mademoiselle Marie Vuillaume, qui est ici présente, pour votre légitime épouse?
Fast forward to the wedding reception. Here's Lino Saputo at the dessert table, a respectable businessman. But why is he here? Isn't Donald Côté a known associate of the mafia's most powerful players?
Le lien entre les Cotroni et Donald Côté était très proche, et même il était fiché chez les policiers comme étant un acolyte, quelqu'un de très près du giron aussi de Paolo Violi.
Remember Lino Saputo's own words. Never get involved with people who resort to violence. Keep a distance from criminal organizations. It turns out, Lino Saputo is no ordinary guest at this wedding. He is Donald Côté's best man. And his wife, Mirella Saputo, is the bridesmaid of honor. At the reception, Lino Saputo and his wife are seated at the head table. We sent questions to Lino Saputo about his relationship with Donald Côté. His lawyer's written response made no mention of the matter. The newlyweds are happy. The party is winding down. People are dancing. New York, coincidentally the state where we discovered that Lino Saputo had even closer ties with one of the most notorious gangsters in U.S. history.
Bonjour madame, Lino Saputo, c'est plaisir de vous rencontrer.
Lino Saputo doesn't often talk to the media.
Oui, oui.
But we met in 2007 when he was giving interviews denying his links to organized crime.
Moi, je le sais que je ne suis pas impliqué pour aucune considération.
When he is associated with the mafia, Lino Saputo is quick to dismiss it.
Je peux vous garantir que jamais, soit de près ou de loin, la mafia était associée avec Saputo ou la famille Saputo ou l'entourage de Saputo.
According to the businessman, the false allegations stem from an event that took place in the 60s and which he says was a mistake.
On parle de l'année 63-64. Vous savez, c'est une lettre que mon père avait signée à l'époque pour inviter M. Bonnano à participer dans son entreprise à l'époque.
Mr. Bonnano was none other than Joe Bonnano, one of the most powerful gangsters in America. Corruption, drug trafficking, and murder. And this is what the letter said. Dear Mr. Bonnano, you have been very helpful to us over the years, advising us. We are prepared to give you an overall 20% in these companies upon your investment of approximately $8,000. At the time, Joe Bonnano was trying to immigrate to Canada with the help of the Saputos. But 8 days after the letter was written, Bonnano's name came up in the news.
Joseph Bonnano, candidat à la citoyenneté canadienne, a été refoulé aux États-Unis d'ordre de la Cour. On le soupçonne d'être l'un des chefs de la Cosa Nostra, organisation internationale de malfaiteurs.
Mais quand mon père a su la réputation de M. Bonnano, il n'a jamais donné suite à il n'y a jamais une transaction qui a été faite.
Lino Saputo has given this explanation on several occasions. No ties to Joe Bonnano after 1964. Yet, the story just can't seem to go away.
Our attempts to invest in markets in Ontario, Vermont, and New York State failed in large part because of the criminal allegations previously pinned on us by the media.
What were those criminal allegations? What happened at the hearings in the U.S.? We wanted to find out. Next stop, the library in Albany, New York. In the early 80s, Lino Saputo applied for a dairy license, but the New York State Department of Agriculture was opposed to it and held hearings to clarify the relationship between Saputo and Joe Bonnano.
Ça, c'est plus clair.
JB,
Ah, mais
20%.
regarde en haut,
Regarde.
les actionnaires.
Stockholders.
All of the evidence and testimony from the hearings were preserved on these plastic sheets.
On a vu Lino plusieurs fois.
The pages number in the thousands. This simple administrative matter became a full-blown investigation. Police from several U.S. states, the FBI, as well as Canadian authorities were involved.
Eugene Eman,
Eugene Eman, ça a dû être un témoin important à l'époque dans cette affaire-là.
The hearing lasted 10 days. Several witnesses were called to testify, including Gene Eman, who apparently had crucial information. He was an investigator working in Arizona, where Joe Bonnano lived. We set out to meet him.
You're going to go left on Kramer.
This is the key witness in the case, Gene Eman. Formerly an FBI agent, he was then working for the Arizona Drug Control Task Force.
Very quiet. I think you would call it a very safe neighborhood.
Gene Eman guides us through the Tucson neighborhood where crime boss Joe Bonnano lived. The former agent was one of the few to slip the handcuffs on Bonnano after spending years investigating him.
This is Sierra Vista. This is 231. His address is 255, and that's right about where that large trash container is, about 100 yards from here. And his home is going to be on the right.
There it is?
Right here. That's right.
Here is the house where mafia ringleader Joe Bonnano lived. And this is where Gene Eman and his team carried out an unusual surveillance operation during the 70s.
Okay.
They went through Joe Bonnano's trash.
There would be two galvanized cans instead of this plastic container, side by side.
The investigators/garbage collectors ran their secret operation over a period of 3 years. These photos show just how precise their actions needed to be. They had 45 seconds to accomplish the task. Gene and a fellow officer would hide inside this van. On trash collecting days, they would drive by Joe Bonnano's house.
I would reach out, pick up the can, pull it into the back of the van. Bill would take Bonnano's sacks out, put the replacement bags in, and I'd put the cans back out on the curb. After we got that, then we'd drive away.
What they picked out of the garbage were torn-up notes. Joe Bonnano was a very organized crime boss. He was always making lists.
Well, we learned by both studying him and watching him that he was the most powerful mafioso in the United States and had specific influence, we learned, in Canada.
Bonnano's handwritten notes were pieced back together in a hidden location at the back of a furniture store in Tucson.
From those notes, we began to develop some patterns of his. He called Canada fairly frequently.
Why was he making all those calls to Canada?
We eventually found, through picking up the notes, that he had a hidden financial interest in Saputo cheese. And that was a secret interest that was held away from the public.
Eventually, the police had enough evidence to obtain a search warrant for Bonnano's home. They seized boxes of documents. The year was 1979, but more searches through his trash would lead to new information.
3 days after our search, we put out his trash dutifully and put another 1,200 notes. He had obviously panicked and wanted to get rid of these documents, which, as we now have found, connected him even more deeply in his relationships with Saputo cheese.
Documents show that Joe Bonnano's relationship with Lino Saputo was ongoing.
They seemed to be not only doing business with each other, but also very friendly. They seemed to interact very smoothly with each other. They just had a relationship, and it was a long-time one.
Gene Ammon and fellow officers collected several other pieces of evidence on Saputo.
I have a copy of those notes. I have a set of all those notes.
We were invited into Gene Ammon's home. So these are all your personal archives. So you haven't seen these boxes for over 30 years.
37 years.
Gene wanted to wait for us before diving back into the investigation. He had just retrieved these old documents. These documents, they're in French.
It certainly appears that that's at least a part of the documentation that Saputo is providing to Joe Bonnano, probably on either arrangement or on demand to show what was going on in Saputo cheese.
Not only did Joe Bonnano have financial statements for Saputo's company, but the word liquido, Italian for cash money, appears frequently in Bonnano's notes about Saputo. The police also found this significant item in the trash.
It was a wrapper from a $1,000 bundle of money. It was part of a $51,000 transfer of money.
According to police, the cash came from companies linked to Saputo. To Judge Charles Brightel, this was not mere police speculation. Judge Brightel was a respected magistrate. He had spent 12 years as Chief Justice of the New York State Court of Appeals. When he retired, he led the administrative hearing into Lino Saputo's dairy permit application. It was held in Albany in 1980 in this very room.
Judge Charles Brightel was the judge, and he heard both sides, basically our side, and we were questioned by Saputo's attorneys. And the determination was that Bonnano did have a relationship with Saputo cheese.
Lino Saputo testified and denied all links to Joe Bonnano. He submitted a letter signed by Quebec Judge Denis Dionne. Dionne had presided over the Inquiry Commission on Organized Crime in Quebec. He wrote that he saw no evidence that could justify an investigation on the Saputos. But it wasn't enough to sway Judge Brightel.
And they were denied their application to do business in New York, which was a huge hit because they were already dealing in multi-millions of dollars of business.
In his memoir, Lino Saputo glosses over these events only to thank the people who testified on his behalf.
The judge eventually rejected our request, but I was touched by their gesture.
He never mentions Judge Brightel's damning decision. Brightel concluded that Bonnano held shares of various companies belonging to Saputo.
Joseph Bonnano has had significant economic and transactional involvement over a substantial period of years with several Canadian cheese companies owned by members of the Saputo family and by Lino Saputo in particular.
Stakes were very high, very high. Bonnano was still an actively known figure in New York. He was the godfather. Plain and simple, he was the godfather.
The judge also found that Lino Saputo had lied.
Lino Saputo has attempted to conceal from the department his and his company's involvement with Bonnano, and has made material statements that are false, misleading, and deceitful.
One of those false statements was concerning a secret meeting the FBI recorded, of which Lino Saputo had no recollection.
It is found as a fact that, contrary to his assertions, Lino and his wife met with Bonnano in Tucson in early 1970.
Mais quand mon père y a su la réputation de M. Bonnano, il n'a jamais donné suite à la... Il n'y a jamais eu une transaction qui a été faite.
The documents that Gene Ammon and his fellow officers were able to put their hands on are evidence that the relationship between the two men stretched out until at least the late 70s. But that's not all. Bonnano's notes also disclosed a name that is of interest, Pepe Fredo, or just Fredo, followed by a Montreal phone number. We tried calling it. We're back in Tucson, Arizona. We're trying to reach Pepe Fredo by phone. This code name and phone number come up several times in Joe Bonnano's notes relating to Lino Saputo in the late 70s. No answer. Who is this Pepe Fredo who seems to be so important to Gene Ammon's investigation? With the help of the RCMP, Ammon was to discover the man's true identity.
So we had these names related to the phone numbers, and then the RCMP determined who the phone numbers belonged to, and that opened up to us who he was relating to.
Pepe Fredo is a member of the Saputo family. He still lives in the same luxurious mansion in Montreal. He is a prominent businessman, and we will tell you shortly who he is. But first, we obtain a video that has never been shown to the public. A rare piece of evidence given to us by a confidential source. It shows a family gathering at the Rizzuto's home in Montreal. These images were taken during the 50th wedding anniversary party for Niccolo Rizzuto and Libertina Mano in 1995. At the time, Niccolo Rizzuto was none other than the godfather of organized crime in Canada. One of the highlights of the video is this surreal scene. The hired musicians begin to play a tune to the delight of the guests as they wait for the anniversary couple to appear. As the family makes its way outside, the band starts playing the theme from The Godfather. The Rizzutos openly flaunt their mafia status. Pepe Fredo, whose name appeared in Joe Bonnano's notes, is a guest at the party. In his book, Lino Saputo mentions this man once.
We also founded Petra, our real estate arm, now one of the largest private real estate companies in Quebec, with over 8.3 million square feet of property in Montreal. My dear friend and brother-in-law, Giuseppe Borsellino, is president.
Giuseppe Borsellino, also known as Pepe Fredo. He is married to Lino Saputo, Lino's sister. He may be less known than his brother-in-law, but Giuseppe Borsellino is a real estate mogul in Montreal. Borsellino has been involved with the Saputo businesses since the 60s. Gene Ammon's investigation of Joe Bonnano's trash clearly shows that Giuseppe Borsellino was the middleman between Lino Saputo and Bonnano.
I would like, if possible, to hear the voice of your brother-in-law and speak with him.
Although he was never formally accused of murder, Joe Bonnano was known as a powerful criminal.
We knew that Bonnano, who had a relationship with the Saputos and the Borsellinos, was credited with 80 murders. Some of them himself, most of them ordered. And so he was a violent guy, and he had a relationship with them.
Giuseppe Borsellino and Bonnano would talk on the phone. They would set up meetings.
Dear Peppo, give me a telephone call Monday night, December 1st, 1975, at 7:00 p.m. your time. He wrote down specific times and arrangements with Borsellino particularly that he was going to call him or receive a call at that phone booth at a particular time on a particular day.
And you were able to confirm that?
We were able to confirm it because we had surveillance on those phone booths. Most of the time, the phone booth that he used was in a hospital corridor. Bill Christensen, the FBI agent, got on a gurney and lay on the gurney next to the phone booth so he could hear what was there was in conversation.
This letter, written by Borsellino in the mid-70s to Joe Bonnano, is telling.
Dear Gio, I don't know how to apologize for the phone call I didn't make. I know that apologies are useless, but I assure you, that day I was held in court for a small matter. I ask for forgiveness and understanding. Allow me to provide you with a photograph of our daughter so you can get to know her. I hope this letter finds you and your family well, and until we speak on the phone, I extend my warmest regards.
Bonnano's notes also show that the two men spoke of money.
Call Pepe Fredo, tell about letter strike and liquido and money.
Back in Montreal, we again try calling Pepe Fredo's phone number that was found in Joe Bonnano's ripped-up notes.
Allô?
Oui, bonjour. J'aimerais parler avec Monsieur Giuseppe Borsellino, s'il vous plaît.
Non, il n'est pas ici.
Je suis bien à la résidence de Monsieur Borsellino et de Madame Saputo?
Oui, oui.
Giuseppe Borsellino still has the same phone number. He declined to talk to us, Lino Saputo as well. In a written response, Borsellino's lawyer denies any wrongdoing on his client's part. In his box of police records, Gene Ammon found the account of a conversation between the Arizona and Canadian authorities dating from 1976 concerning Lino Saputo and Giuseppe Borsellino.
Saputos are known as organized crime figures and have been under investigation for the past year.
What did the Canadian authorities do with all that evidence you collected in Joe Bonnano's trash?
Well, I know that they conducted a raid on Saputo's home. I'm not sure what the result of that was, but in terms of follow-up, I don't know that there was any. But I can't speak to everything that RCMP does, but as far as we know, that was the end of it.
Lino Saputo and Giuseppe Borsellino have never faced criminal charges. Did contacts with criminal elements end after Gene Ammon's investigation? The answer is no. Back to the Rizzuto home in 1995, 15 years after the Arizona investigation ended. At the time, the Rizzutos were controlling the mafia in Montreal. The representatives of the Bonnano clan in Montreal, Paolo Violi and Vic Catroni, were dead. Niccolo Rizzuto and his son Vito had taken over. At their wedding anniversary party, they welcome close friends into their home, including high-ranking criminals such as this convicted heroin trafficker. They also take photos with the guests, A lucky few get to pose next to the Godfather himself. Among them, Lino Saputo and Giuseppe Borsellino, also known as Pepe Fredo. According to police documents, Giuseppe Borsellino continued his contacts with members of the Rizzuto clan until at least the mid-2000s. We asked Lino Saputo to comment his brother-in-law's relationship with the Rizzutos. He did not answer the question.
Mon rêve, ça a toujours été de laisser une bonne réputation, puis je vais la laisser, la bonne réputation.
Why has Lino Saputo always lied about his relationship with the highest echelons of organized crime?
We didn't sell any shares to Mr. Bonnano.
Why has he denied having any links to organized crime?
Je peux vous garantir que jamais, soit de près ou de loin, la mafia était associée avec Saputo ou la famille Saputo ou l'entourage de Saputo.
Because it would surely have tainted the Saputo name in business circles. From Lino Saputo's appointment to the board of directors of the National Bank, where he served for 10 years, to the Saputo's influence in politics, Giuseppe Borsellino was an official fundraiser for the Quebec Provincial Liberal Party. To the many rewards, like this honorary PhD from Concordia University, the many distinguished honors.
Lino Saputo, au nom du peuple québécois, je vous fais officier de l'Ordre national du Québec.
Or the country's highest awards, like the Order of Canada, bestowed by the Governor General. Would Lino Saputo have been celebrated by Canadians if he had told the truth about his past connections to organized crime? This was a special English presentation of Enquête, Radio-Canada's investigative program. Thank you for watching.